I believe we are live, and you can see by the big smile on my face that we were having a bit of a conversation behind the scenes before this all started. So, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today. This group that we're live streaming in is all about extraordinary women making extraordinary moves.
I
And
love it.
yeah, and there's just so many people that light up for me when I start having conversation about being extraordinary. And we've had a few people that has triggered something and said, I'm not extraordinary. And I'm here to show everybody that we have this extraordinary being inside of us. And it's really up to us to let that shine out. So, first
Yes,
and foremost, thank you for joining me and saying yes to this.
absolutely. It's an honor and a privilege. Thank you for asking me. I love the whole field behind what you just described. It's so needed and it's just so valuable. Great.
Mm. I can't
Mhm.
wait to get into your story because just knowing a tiny bit of your story and who you serve and how you serve these people, I can understand why you commented that way. And I want other people to feel that as well. So, Jessica, first and foremost, I want you just to tell everybody where you're coming in from today because we actually have a global audience here, and that's super exciting to me. And then, what is it that you do?
Beautiful. Okay, so I'm coming in from northern Michigan. We live in a corner that I call paradise. Right now, I think we're at about 18 inches, almost 2 feet of snow, and it's so cozy. So that's where I'm from. Originally from Alberta, Canada, but we lived in the States now for 22 years about. Yeah.
Where in Alberta, just because you know that I live in Alberta. So I'd love to
All
just,
right. I was born in Lethbridge, and we lived 5 miles outside of Raymond, so just a tiny little town. Yep, that's where I grew up.
and you're so close to the US border at that place, it
Yes.
probably was very easy just to skip across.
Yeah, we saw the Rockies right out our kitchen window every morning, and then the other side, we always joked you could see your dog running away from 3 days for 3 days because there was like nothing on that side. So I loved it. I grew up out west. I loved it.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
So, Jessica, who is it that you serve at this point in your life? Because, and when I say that serve, I hope that people really understand that we are here providing value to someone. And so, can you
Right.
just help me understand your audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I primarily serve women, and usually it's moms because my passion is for women and children. Of course, we all see life and are so often influenced by what we've walked through. And so definitely my audience is to empower moms and women on how to heal, and that they truly do have so much at their fingertips to help them and their families and their children thrive holistically.
Holistically. So you got my
Yeah.
attention in that right away. And
Hmm.
it is actually Dr. Jessica. So I would love to go a little bit into the story of when did that come through? Because I
Sure.
believe that the part of the being extraordinary and you actually stepping into this role come with the backstory and everything else. So let's go down that road a bit.
Sure, absolutely. So my mom was always more natural minded. She did massage. We weren't really well off growing up, and so we had everything from scratch. We grew our own big gardens, raised a lot of our own meat, and she also sold supplements out of our house to the people that she would massage and help. So we always kind of had that bent to be more holistic minded. Some of it was out of necessity, and some of it is just the way I was raised. But what really kind of got me into that was when we first were married and our daughter was born, and 6 weeks in, she got RSV. And we were living in a community in northern Michigan, very close. Actually, Dan and I were living right across the yard from an Amish midwife. So we were right in the middle of an Amish community. We've lived in like six of them. It's so interesting. That's where we end up. And an Amish lady that my husband actually worked for her husband making cabinets gave me an herbal tincture for our daughter. And it was so fascinating to me. I kind of grown up around it, but just how well it worked. And it kind of sparked an idea. My parents raised us girls to have a thirst for knowledge. You know, dad said, I want you to be able to thrive. If you were dropped off in the middle of Chicago, you would know how to because you love to learn and you're just figure things out. And so I started a school. I enrolled in a school to be a family herbalist. And through that journey, I just kept upgrading my education. But I started making a tincture. And it was so interesting because the one herbal tincture that I made to help babies relax and children relax worked so well for adults that I took it, ended up taking it to a clinic in Indiana, and they tested it and said, could we sell it? And that kind of launched the next part of my life journey, I guess you could say, was starting to make herbal tinctures and selling them, and salves and things like that. So that was the first part of my journey. I don't know how far you want me to go.
Well, you know what? I think that this is a great time for us just to back it up a little bit and talk about your family, because you mentioned that your husband was a cabinet maker. So,
Well, go
yeah,
ahead.
and then your children a little bit too.
Sure. So my husband was raised in British Columbia as a rancher. And when we moved to the States, he worked in a place that sold Amish furniture. And then through a series of events, we moved further north in Michigan, and he was offered a job at a cabinet maker. They had just left the Amish, and so they made the most beautiful furniture. And so he learned how to make this furniture, and it was an amazing experience. And it kind of got us into that group even more so, which is beautiful. And so I had, at that time, we had just Tori, which is our daughter. And then 10 months, no, about a year and a half later, we had our son, Derek. And now we have Kevin. So we have a girl and two boys.
Nice. Okay. Now I think that you can head into the part of the story that you were going to go head into right just before that.
Sure. So, fast forward a couple years, I became a master herbalist, a certified natural health professional, and several other degrees, and was just really passionate about health and healing. When I was 9 months pregnant, literally, our daughter was diagnosed with leukemia. That's another whole long story, but that was like a huge out of the blue um, blow to us because we had no, like, it was so unexpected. So we had a 3-week-old baby, and she was diagnosed a week after he was born. And 6 months into her treatment, we were making maple syrup. So we lived in the woods, and we made all our own maple syrup. And my husband was out with the two children, Tori and Derek, and we were boiling a big vat of sap, and a brick broke. And the boiling sap went over our daughter and our son. He was standing sideways. So Tori was airlifted to a burn and trauma unit, and our son was taken by ambulance. And that started out a very nightmarish journey for sure. We were sitting in the burn and trauma unit, and we were there for 3 days, just fighting for Tori's life. And my husband got a call that the company he was working for went bankrupt, and we no longer had a job. And so you know that when you're kind of at that place, it's really only up from there. Through a series of God events, the pain meds didn't work for Tori. She was losing her mind. She stopped responding to, I mean, she just went into her head. And I knew there was severe trauma there. So I heard about a natural treatment that does not take, what they call debriding with burns. And it was developed by an Amish gentleman, and she was burned from above her chest to below her knees. They would have wanted a skin graft. Most of her body would have been either skin graft or burns. And I knew that wouldn't work. She had just finished the harshest week of chemo the week before. Her body was not at a place to deal with any of this. Through a long series of events, another whole long story, I petitioned the hospital, which is unheard of, if they would do a natural treatment for burns. And it was only a God story because this is unheard of. It was a university hospital, and they said, we will allow you to treat her holistically if we can keep track, and every 12 hours we'll document her progress. And if it's okay, then we'll allow you to keep it. But if at any time we need to step in, we're going to step in. And the only thing that they agreed to said, if you would allow us to skin graft her hand, or we will skin graft her hand, you can have the rest of her body. Her healing was so extraordinary, where they said she would have to be skin grafted, needed nothing. And so she healed so miraculously, they actually took her case to Washington to show that this type of healing works. So that, through her story, threw me even more into searching for answers of why and how and healing. And I blogged her whole journey, which kind of expanded, unbeknownst to me, not even thinking about that, but expanded the reach of my business. And I went through for further certification in healing after that. And so that's kind of been my journey has been, they say your place of pain can become your place of rain. All that I learned, as nightmarish as it was, and all that we have walked through has in the last, she turned 22 November 30th. Her last chemo was November 29th, 14 years ago. And
Mm.
so it's been her journey that we walked through has helped so many others through what we learned during that time.
Wow. And this is really just the caliber of stories that I want to tell in these places. And not that everybody's story doesn't have its own uniqueness and its own place where you literally had to step into this. Can you
Right.
help us? Like, this story is just like, oh my goodness, the ups and the downs. And then it's like, what happened next? And oh my goodness, can you remember a time that you had to consciously make a decision to step into this life that you are in now? Or do you feel that God literally put you into the next step to the next step, just in this, like, I have to do this?
He really, yes to both actually.
Okay.
We were, remember I said we didn't have work for a year, and my husband looked for jobs everywhere. He would cut wood, but the thing of it was I had a newborn baby. We had to wrap burns with this treatment. We had to wrap burns every 12 hours, and that was a lengthy process for two children. So he couldn't go far from home because I mean, it was literally like I would have to talk to Tori and tell her stories to get her mind off of it. Because the only time there was pain was when her burns were exposed, and she was burned so extensively we had to wrap her body every 12 hours. So it was a really big deal that he had to stay close to home. Yet we had no income. So that's when I had to go back to work. I did bioenergetic testing. I worked from home, and that was a choice where you
Mhm.
had to do something, but also it was a door that it was an opportunity. Well, after a year, my husband got a call from a company in Kentucky. We were living in Michigan. It said, "Would you come down and show us how to run this logging equipment?" Because that's what he did for a living prior to. It was 2008 when we had the crash that he lost his job. He was a logger then at that time, and so we went to. He went down to demonstrate it, and they loved him, and they kept offering, "If we would do this, would you move to Kentucky? If you would do this." Well, we couldn't really. We didn't think, but they kept offering to the point where we said, okay, we will come down on a temporary basis. Well, we looked for houses for a month and we couldn't find anything close. The only house that opened was in an Amish community. And they actually don't sell outside of their community. It was one of those things where somebody heard this house is going to go for sale. And normally, if it had been up for sale, the Amish would have bought it the next day. We went in that evening and bought it, and they hadn't even known it was for sale. It's a total God thing. So, to your question, when they heard our like that we were moving in there, what we did, they said, "Would you be the naturopath for our community?" And so my husband had a job. He drove an hour for work, but I was able to be the naturopath. But I was in such a it was 4 years, from the cancer, the burns, not the cancer. She was still in cancer treatment. The burns were kind of coming to an end. We were back and forth with Shriners. It was I was at a place where I was pretty low physically, mentally, just from everything. But yet the opportunity, not having worked for a year, we desperately needed finances.
Hmm.
So I loved it. They were so gracious. They were so amazing. We were the only English people, except for one other person in the whole community. They enveloped us. So I went back to work, and I had clients from 6 in the morning if they're buggy, if they were there in the area, because they get up very early, till late at night. If they were going home and it was 11 o'clock, they have no phones, they would just stop in. So it was one of those times, yes. God kept opening doors, which actually that led me to my next business that I started. But it was also choices. You can't always go by how you feel. Sometimes life puts you in places where you need to just do the next thing and say yes to the next thing. And that's how my next business started.
Wow. Okay. You got us on the edge of our seats. What was the next business?
So during that time, I actually had, during that time, just from the sheer stress, I was helping so many people with anxiety, depression. That was 80% of my business was mental health. And I was also homeschooling our children because of not having finances for so long. We had a 5,000 square foot garden, raised all our own meats. It was just a lot. And so we kept going at a very fast-paced life. And even though I knew all the things, I was not taking care of myself. And my husband said, honey, you've got to focus on yourself. And I was kind of almost in survival mode. And that's when my health took a turn, and I had a nervous breakdown, such severe anxiety. And the thing of it was, is I told my husband, I help people like me. And he said, honey, just, it doesn't matter. You are the most important thing. Focus on you. Well, I had someone telling me about some products I felt would help. Long story short, I just said, I don't have the brain space to look at it. But my friend was very persistent, and she said, just look at this. It's going to help you. So finally I did. That's another whole story that's really interesting, but it helped me so much. I started sharing it with my clientele. I started sharing it with different people. It helped Tori tremendously. And what turned into just something for me turned into a business. And that was probably the hardest season, second hardest season of my life at the time, because I didn't feel like I had the bandwidth to add something more to my plate. But the opportunity was so incredible. And I saw this as a way to be able to bring Dan home again. Because even though the year that he was home was so financially hard and he was always looking for work, it was also, we love being together. We could be together 24/7 and not get sick of each other. And so I saw this as an opportunity. And so through, it felt like, 30-hour days, we built up another business on top of my naturopath business. And through that, we were able to move back to Michigan. And so that was kind of the next big step.
Wow. I love this because you're talking about why, right? Each and every time. I think this is what makes your story so relatable, is that each and every time you take us through this journey with you, and here's where we were, and here's what we really desired, but then here's what came from that. And
Right.
I really think that that is the story of being extraordinary and making extraordinary moves that then allow us to look back and go, wow, not only did I survive that and got through it, but look where I am today. And so I know that you've in this few moments reminded me of many stories in my life where it maybe didn't feel at the time that I had a choice,
Yeah.
but I look back now and it was like, well, I was praying and the solution was right in front of me. And so then I just took that. What can you say to women, whether they don't recognize themselves as extraordinary, or that something that happened in their life is extraordinary? Because we're here celebrating women from all over the world and really showcasing them. But as we do that, the last thing I ever want them to do is look up at the people that we're interviewing and say, oh, I wish I could be like that. I want them to recognize themselves in these stories. So what
Right.
is some advice you can give to these women?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I truly believe that God places greatness in each of us, and He empowers us with the tools for whatever it is that we're supposed to do. And I think so very often, and I challenge each of you, because even just thinking of these questions that you gave to me, Debbie, writing it out, sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, that actually was traumatic. And like, how did we do that? Like, and I look back and I don't know how we did it. But my mom always said a line that I kind of clung to. She says, "You have grace for the moment. You don't get grace ahead of time for what it is you're going to walk through." And that just always, I held on to that, because looking back, I don't see that I would have the grace to do that. But when I was in it, I had the grace. I didn't think I did, but it did. And so I say to each woman, when we all walk through our own journey. We all have hard times, but when I look at other people's stories, look at what we do walk through. Look at what you have walked through and overcame. Look at how you did press through something and you're on the other side. Maybe you're in the middle of it right now. And there was so often minute by minute, if I can get through this moment, if I can just get through the next thing. But we do. The thing of it is we do get through that. And so very often we're praying, or we're, however is your belief, we're looking for answers to, like, if we can just, is how can we get out of this? For us, we were praying for some way that we would not have to continue this literally 30-hour days with all the needs that were at the time. When the opportunity came that was presented for the business, this other business, it did not look like the answer that we were looking for, but it was the next thing. And I actually said, I'll do this if hell freezes over, but it kept being presented and being presented. And I said no for 8 months. I'm like, there's no way I can. And then someone said to me, you've been praying, because that's our belief. So whatever it is, you've been looking for an answer and you keep talking about this. And right here in front of you is the answer that you've been looking for. Why do you keep pushing it away? And when we said yes, it wasn't easy, but the doors open and the grace was there for that moment. And so I think that if you just follow, what is it that you have grace for? And that does not mean easy. It just means that you can, and you can do it, and you can get to the next thing. And so I just encourage you, look at what you have walked through to know that
Mm.
you can do the next. Because
Wow.
opportunity, I wrote down, I don't even know where I wrote it here, but opportunity rarely looks like what it is that we're looking for.
Oh, I so believe it. How many times have we been there? And for me, it's like I say, take your blinders off,
Yeah,
because right here on the other side is what you've been asking for. But we
right.
think it's going to look like the specific thing, and we just have to get out of our own way and really just
Yeah.
answer. So that is so beautiful. Now, I am in a high-end mastermind with you, Jessica, and one of the things that I've noticed right away is how passionate you are of helping others and serving through your products, through your knowledge, through your wisdom, and helping somebody specifically. Now, I don't know if you want to go down that line, but I would love to hear a little bit about why you're passionate about the skincare line that you have, if you would want to. And if you
Sure.
don't, that's fine. Yeah.
Absolutely. So again, going back to where, how we all have gone through life and we look at things through that. So this is kind of interesting. I sold my business when we moved from Kentucky back to Michigan about 10 years, about 10-ish years ago now. And I didn't have the grace to continue doing all that we were doing in the move because my other business was going so well. And I was so busy as a naturopath too. And so I sold it to a lovely Amish couple there, and they took over that part of it. But I love creating. And about 6 months ago, I started getting the itch to just make something again. But really, I wanted what I was going to make to fall in line with what I was doing. And skin, my daughter being burned, was one big part of it. And my mom had skin cancer twice. And during that time, she treated it holistically. And what I would have her put on her skin was to help it to heal. She had skin cancer removed once, and was with no scarring. You could never know. You would never know looking at her. And so I started praying about what is it that I should like. How is this supposed to come together? And then I would literally sit on the couch, and back to your question about women, is thinking there's no way I could possibly add one more thing to our plate. Like, there's just no way. And the two things happened simultaneously. I had a dream, and I woke up from the dream with a list of ingredients. And as I was looking at these ingredients, I'm like, every one of these are for skin and have all the medicinal benefits to fight a lot of things we don't want happening to our skin. They're anti-aging, they're collagen producing, they're cell regenerating, they're fighting cancer, they're all the things. Well, I was thinking, how could I have the time to physically make them like I used to? Who could I have that I could hire that I would trust implicitly would follow my recipe to the T, that the quality, everything would be there. Well, simultaneously, I woke up, got open my computer, and my really good friend posted a post of how she wanted to make something based in grass-fed tallow. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I texted her, I said, would you be open to taking your post down until you and I and your husband and my husband talk? And she's like, yeah. I said, I have a proposition for you. Well, that launched the line of our grass-fed tallow-based line that is not just like so many grass-fed tallow-based lines, but that is meant to heal while you're literally aging backwards, because it literally ages you backwards. It causes collagen production and heals and cell regeneration. And so that was the first part. Well, then because skin cancer is a big thing, with my people I know closely, I wanted something else because I hear a lot of, I deal with so many moms, thousands of moms and children, um, for a sunscreen. And I'm like, if I can do this, why can't I develop something that's not out there yet? There's some tallow-based sunscreens, but there was nothing like what I had in this dream. And one thing that I want women to know, because I think women literally are the household, the hub of the household, they usually determine that, is that what we put on our skin is in our blood in about 20 seconds. So if we cannot eat it, we're better off eating it because then our liver can filter it than putting it on our skin. So if what we put on our skin is not edible, it's going to be in our bloodstream, either promoting health or not. And so I wanted to create products you could eat and that when they get into your bloodstream, they go to work for you. And so I created a tallow-based sunscreen that I have pictures of kids eating. Now, the only thing that's going to happen, it might not taste good, but it's so safe. So we launched a line, and I was like, okay, I don't know how to market this. And like I feel it should be because this is my passion. Um, and then lastly, well, we got to mastermind, and I'm sitting at a table with Debbie and another friend, and I think it was you, Debbie. Didn't you whisper you need to talk to him? Well, I did. And we're rebranding, and we're going to be launching in the next week or two our new website. We have our current website, which I look at it, I'm like, oh, but you know what? It was part of the learning journey. You know, I have to have grace for myself. I've never built a website. I didn't build it. I just hired someone. It's not at all now that I'm knowing and learning what I would ever want. And it's kind of like, oh, but it's part of the journey. Life is a journey. And lastly, in 2 days, one thing that I will end with this. Remember how actually just came to me right now. Remember how I said what got me into health was my daughter had RSV. She was in a oxygen tent for a week. I didn't even think about it till now. I had another dream of because I work with so many children. When I was in the Amish community, I saw so many children and whooping cough, everything. And so I created a tallow-based decongestant for children and for adults for lung congestion, lymph congestion, sore throats, to open up the lungs in a way that is antiviral, antibacterial. It's so immune boosting. So it's not petroleum based like Vicks and all that, which is actually dangerous. It's not just going to open your lungs, it's going to soak in all the oils and the nutrients to fight off what it is you're fighting. And that launches in 2 days. So this is kind of where we're at. And so we're just finalizing the website. If this is business number 3, and none of it would have I thought I'd have had time for, but it's what the passions of our heart. We're given these passions for a reason.
I couldn't say that better. It's so beautiful because one of the questions that I was going to ask, and I'll ask it right now, even though you've kind of answered it, there might be something else that wants to spur here, is if your daughter wouldn't have got cancer, if your children wouldn't have been burned, do you see this path that happened and all this good and this ripple of healing and love and abundance?
Mm-hmm.
To me, that is such a gift when we can look back at that time where we really didn't know if we could survive it or if she would survive it, they would survive it, to looking back now and this story just unfolds and you can see that it's happening
Yeah.
for a reason. And your passion is so clear because I'll reframe the question. Would you be this passionate about skincare, about making sure that all those other ingredients that are okay, they're not okay in your books. And you
No, no, they're
there was
not.
better.
Yeah. Well, to have options better. So, to have to create options because there's so many moms, no moms willingly will do something dangerous. But so very often they're like, we're inundated with so many options. How can we, what should we do? Because this looks good and that looks good. And I like to look at people and say to them, truly, what we have created here, I want you to know from the bottom of my heart that I put this on my children. We use this, and I look at your children like I look at my children. Children are my heart. I fought for my child's life. I know what it's like, and I would not put anything into it that I would not put on my child. And so also we wanted to make it affordable. And so that's our heart is to be able to make affordable, high quality products that truly are not just another one. I
Mm.
want them to heal, but at the same time, their vanity. I want to age backwards. I want to have beautiful skin. I want to be able to benefit on so many levels. And so I kind of try to do it all into one.
Well, you've succeeded. You have succeeded. And I mean, I'm just so grateful for your passion, your
Yeah.
ability to learn and to understand so that we can get through all of the distractions and all the commercials and all of the things that are telling us something and just go to the trusted source. That's what I'm so grateful for.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well,
A journey.
yeah, it's been a journey. As we close this off, is there any last words you'd love to share?
Well, I would just tell you, I would just speak to women is the doors of opportunity, the passions of your heart that you have. You've been gifted with those passions. And I always say there's provision for the vision you've been given. And so the provision often will not come until you take the first step. And it's like every step activates the next step. And right when you think of, I don't know if I can do this, or where's the finances to do this, when we step out in faith with the passion that we've been given, with the desires of our heart that we have, what each of us have something different. The provision, the activation is there when you take the step. So my encouragement to you is just say yes. Say yes
Mm,
to whatever's in front of you. The doors will open.
wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Jessica. It's been just such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for this opportunity, Debbie.